Mia Coleman was the quiet one who never raised her voice, and Patrick Reed was the manager who made sure everyone knew who was in charge. What no one saw coming was that one night, after years of silence and simmering rage, it was the kind of town where nothing truly shocking ever happened, where most people knew each other by name and shared waves at traffic lights. She started out like any other part-timer, quiet, on time, and grateful for a paycheck. But as months turned into years, her demeanor shifted. She kept her head down, rarely spoke unless spoken to, and never socialized with her co-workers. Patrick had changed Mia's schedule 3 times in 1 week without notifying her, not just of her hours and treatment, but of every slight, every insult, every time she was publicly corrected in front of customers. Her private social media accounts, under a pseudonym, were filled with late-night rants and vague messages about getting even and the final straw. Most people scroll past them without a second thought. That's exactly what happened with Mia Coleman's final post. For hours, it sat unnoticed on a niche forum dedicated to fast food workers venting about long hours, rude customers, and bad bosses. She claimed Patrick had accused her of stealing but never filed a report, just let the rumor spread. She said her co-workers stopped trusting her and some even treated her like a criminal. Mia talked about how her complaints were ignored when she went to the regional supervisor, who reportedly told her to just work through it. She said she felt like a ghost present but unseen. No one cared what she was going through, but Mia's message wasn't just another complaint. It was long, emotional, and laced with something darker. She wrote that people like Patrick always got away with it, that they crushed the quiet ones and walked away clean. She said there was power in silence, but that silence was starting to feel like surrender. And then came the final line, "If no one's going to stop him, maybe I will." At first, the posts had been ambiguous, almost poetic in tone. But as time went on, they turned sharper, angrier, more specific. She began referencing her workplace more openly, hinting at a plan, warning of consequences. When she showed up late due to the confusion, he threatened to suspend her. That same week, a register came up short during her shift. Within days, the McDonald's that had once been the heart of Parkwood became the center of a chilling story no one could have predicted. And it all started with a worker everyone had overlooked. Although no one was officially blamed, Patrick mentioned keeping an eye on certain people. While looking directly at her, that was the tipping point. Some assumed she was just shy, or maybe going through something personal, but few really took the time to find out. From there, it spiraled into a detailed account of her life working under Patrick Reed. She wrote about the first time he made her cry just 2 weeks into the job when he called her useless in front of a full lobby for not mopping fast enough. She listed every write-up she believed was unfair, every time he changed her shift without telling her, and every humiliating moment she had kept bottled up. Mia described how she had started to dread going to work, how even the sound of her alarm triggered anxiety, and how she cried in her car before nearly every shift. Mia became one of those employees who was easy to overlook, reliable, invisible. On the edge of a shopping center, nestled between a car wash and a discount grocery store, stood a small McDonald's. To corporate, he was a model employee, organized, results-driven, and firm. To those under him, he was something else entirely. His management style was abrasive. He barked orders, criticized without mercy, and seemed to take pride in catching people in the smallest mistakes. Though some workers managed to laugh off his behavior, others quietly endured. Mia was one of the latter. She bore the brunt of Patrick's scrutiny, often being assigned the worst shifts, written up for minor infractions, and accused of slacking off despite maintaining one of the best attendance records on staff. Open 24 hours and always staffed with familiar faces, it served as a reliable stop for late-night meals, after-school snacks, and early morning coffee runs. For years, it operated without incident, but behind the warm smiles and the smell of fries, a storm was slowly building. Mia would turn that McDonald's into a crime scene and vanish without a trace. In the suburban sprawl of Parkwood, Illinois, life moved at a steady, predictable pace. Mia Coleman had been working at that McDonald's since she was 20. Her manager, Patrick Reed, had been running the location for nearly a decade. By mid-October, tensions had become impossible to ignore. Unknown to most of her co-workers, Mia had been keeping track. Nobody paid attention. In a world of constant online noise, her words were just more static until they weren't. The internet is filled with angry anonymous rants, cryptic posts, and dramatic stories that vanish as quickly as they appear. Posted just before midnight, the message began with a simple sentence, "I'm not crazy, but I am done." The post grew more intense as it went on. Toward the end of the post, her tone shifted. It was no longer about hurt feelings, it was about consequences. She wrote that people like Patrick always got away with it, that they crushed the quiet ones and walked away clean. She said there was power in silence, but that silence was starting to feel like surrender. And then came the final line, "If no one's going to stop him, maybe I will." That one sentence set everything in motion. At first, only a few users noticed the post. One person commented asking if she was okay. Mia's spiral hadn't happened overnight. It had been unfolding slowly, silently, online, and now the world was watching. In the small break room at the back of the restaurant, Patrick Reed's body lay crumpled beside a table covered in schedules and employee notices. He had been struck multiple times with what investigators determined was a heavy fryer basket. His head showed signs of blunt force trauma, and he had several cuts along his arms and torso, likely from a box cutter, which was found beside his body. Blood pooled under his left side, and one of his shoes had come off during the struggle. Another said she should quit her job and move on. But when Patrick's death hit the local news the next day, everything changed. The quiet, dependable McDonald's that had been a pillar in Parkwood was now the center of a criminal investigation, and the prime suspect had vanished. Her car, a gray 2008 Honda Civic, was found abandoned just outside the state line in Indiana, roughly 70 miles from the scene. It had been left on a gravel turnout near a wooded area, the keys gone and the license plates removed. Inside, detectives found her McDonald's uniform folded neatly in the back seat. Her phone was there too, but the SIM card had been removed and the device had been wiped clean. Whoever left that car didn't want to be found. A chair had been knocked over and the snack machine's glass door was slightly ajar, but otherwise the room looked as it always had. She was listed as armed and dangerous with a warrant for first-degree murder. Yet, no one had seen her. No security footage showed her leaving the area. No ride-share activity. No bus or train tickets under her name. It was as if Mia had disappeared into thin air. Police reviewed the building's internal cameras, which revealed key moments leading up to the murder. Mia was seen leaving the room alone, walking quickly, no longer holding her phone. Mia's locker was empty, except for a pair of shoes and an old employee handbook. Her car, a gray Honda Civic, was missing. She passed the counter, exited through the back door, and didn't clock out. That was the last time she was seen. At 10:17 p.m. the night before, Mia was seen entering the break room. She appeared calm, still in uniform, and was holding something in her hand, possibly her phone. Screenshots of Mia's message spread fast, surfacing on Reddit, Twitter, and even YouTube channels that specialized in unsolved crimes and internet mysteries. He seemed irritated, pointing as he spoke, based on his gestures caught by the hallway camera. Then, at exactly 10:21 p.m., the feed from the break room camera cut out. This wasn't unusual. Older surveillance systems often had blind spots or moments of dropped footage, especially if the camera wiring had been jostled. Unfortunately, this gap lasted nearly 30 minutes. The original post was deleted within hours, but by then it had already been archived and dissected. Police were alerted almost immediately. What had seemed like a frustrated outburst online was now being treated as a potential confession. Investigators began pulling Mia's online activity, tracing accounts, and contacting forum moderators. As usual, she expected to start the prep for the breakfast shift, brew fresh coffee, warm the griddles, and stock the front counter. Within 15 minutes, police cars were pulling into the lot. Soon after, crime scene tape surrounded the entrance, and what had started as a routine morning quickly unraveled into the most horrifying day the restaurant had ever seen. But something felt wrong the moment she pulled into the parking lot. The lights were still on inside, but the door was locked, which was never the case for a 24-hour location. When she peered through the glass, she noticed the back hallway light was flickering and a mop bucket had been tipped over, the soapy water dried into a streak along the tiles. What they found wasn't just one post, but months of disturbing content. Drawings, notes, and journal-like entries all circling the same theme of revenge. For law enforcement, it was clear. It was just after 6 a.m. when the first employee arrived at the McDonald's on Route 17. She called her supervisor, who didn't answer. Then she tried the assistant manager, who told her to wait outside. Inside, the scene was grim. Nothing else in the room had been disturbed. At 10:19 p.m., Patrick followed her into the room. At 10:48 p.m., the camera came back online. Police searched the premises thoroughly. Patrick's office remained locked, his car was still in the lot, and there were no signs of forced entry. By morning, the restaurant was shut down, the employees sent home, and investigators had begun treating the break room as a murder scene. The search for Mia Coleman began immediately, but within hours it was clear she had planned her disappearance with unsettling precision. Authorities issued a statewide alert. Her photo was circulated to local news stations, shared across social media, and posted in gas stations and convenience stores. She was listed as armed and dangerous with a warrant for first-degree murder. Yet, no one had seen her. No security footage showed her leaving the area. No rideshare activity. No bus or train tickets under her name. Most of the pages were missing, ripped clean from the spiral binding. But one page remained, a rough checklist written in uneven, almost frantic handwriting. Some items were already crossed out: clean out locker, destroy phone, leave no witnesses. Some believed she had helped possibly a friend or secret boyfriend who provided her with a new identity. Others believed she was living off the grid, hiding in national parks or among transient communities. Her name stayed on the most wanted lists, but her trail grew colder with each passing week. Tips had dried up, the national media moved on, and even internet sleuths began shifting their focus to newer mysteries. Despite the manhunt, despite the nationwide warrant, Mia Coleman had vanished without leaving a trace. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't express regret. Instead, she laid out her thoughts in a way that read more like a closing argument than a confession. It had been mailed from a generic blue drop box on the edge of a busy plaza, making it impossible to trace. Locals still drive by and whisper about what happened there. Mia's story became something of a legend, part crime, part ghost story, part unsolved puzzle. The writing matched journal entries pulled from Mia's abandoned car, confirming what detectives already knew: she had sent it. But where she was or what she planned next remained a mystery. She said Patrick Reed was a man who fed off control, who thrived on silence because it gave him permission to keep hurting others. She described the fear, the humiliation, and the way she had been slowly erased as a person in that job. Others think she's blended into a new identity, working under a different name in another forgotten town. And a few believe something more disturbing, that she's still out there, watching, waiting, and choosing her next target. The letter claimed that the systems meant to protect her, the company, the supervisors, even society, had done nothing. And so, she said, she took justice into her own hands. With no digital footprint, no financial activity, and no known contacts, investigators were left with nothing but unanswered questions and an empty file slowly gathering dust. Until the letter arrived, it became clear to law enforcement Mia Coleman had planned more than just a killing. She had planned how to disappear. One theory suggested she had boarded a freight train heading west, using methods shared on online forums about hobo travel, but every lead fizzled out. 2 boxes remained unchecked. One said justice. The other said freedom. Investigators debated what the words meant. Was this about revenge, escape, or both? There was no name, no return address, just a simple postmark, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten in black ink, neat but forceful. The letter wasn't long, but every word landed like a blow. It was as if Mia had disappeared into thin air. She had no prior criminal record, no history of violence, and had never even received a speeding ticket. But what disturbed investigators the most wasn't her admission of guilt, it was the final paragraph. In it, she warned that Patrick wasn't an exception, just a symptom. She claimed she had met others like him, hidden behind smiles, tucked into offices, protected by titles. She wrote, "This isn't over. There are more of them and more of us watching." But there were signs that something had been wrong for a long time. Former classmates described her as shy, introverted, but incredibly smart. She had once been on a scholarship track, majoring in psychology at a local college, but dropped out just months after her mother passed away from cancer in 2020. From that point on, she seemed to disappear from her old life, taking low-wage jobs to survive and cutting ties with most of her friends. The most chilling discovery came from a torn notebook recovered from the car's glove compartment. The more police uncovered about Mia, the more questions surfaced. The woman had come in just before closing, wearing a hoodie and paying in cash. She barely spoke and didn't make eye contact. By the time police arrived, she was gone. Surveillance footage was too grainy to confirm her identity, but the resemblance was enough to reopen the tip line. Online investigators took up the case next. Reddit threads and TikTok videos speculated about her mental state, her motive, and her escape. Then, weeks later, a waitress in a small-town diner in rural Tennessee reported seeing someone matching Mia's description. Despite months of searching, Mia remained out of reach. 6 months after the murder of Patrick Reed, the case had lost its heat. It came on a cold March morning, addressed in block letters to the Parkwood Police Department. The writer didn't introduce themselves, but it was clear from the tone and from details only the killer could know that it was from Mia. The letter included a chilling line, "I stopped him because no one else would." The letter was unsigned, no fingerprints, no DNA. Forensics found nothing useful, not even on the envelope. The Parkwood McDonald's never reopened. The building was sold quietly and converted into a storage facility. To this day, Mia Coleman remains one of the most elusive fugitives in recent history. Some believe she's hiding out in a remote cabin. Others think she's blended into a new identity, working under a different name in another forgotten town. And a few believe something more disturbing, that she's still out there, watching, waiting, and choosing her next target.